Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the story of a legendary piece of ceramic art, a small ball that seems to hold entire galaxies right there in its glaze.
At first glance, it looks almost deceptively simple, just a dark, unassuming little tea bowl. But this object, known as Jian, has a history so rich and fascinating that it was coveted by emperors and even celebrated by poets.
So it really makes you wonder, right? What made this seemingly simple bowl so profoundly special? What kind of secrets are hidden within its dark, shimmering surface? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
All right, to really understand this bowl, we first have to understand the world that it came from. And that world was the Song dynasty in China, a time of just incredible cultural and artistic flourishing. The historian Chen Yinke really nailed it. The Song dynasty wasn't just an economic powerhouse. This was a true golden age for the arts, philosophy, you name it. And that kind of environment, well, it demanded something as refined and beautiful as the Zhan bowl. And right at the heart of this whole cultural explosion was a new national obsession: tea. Seriously, during the Song dynasty, tea wasn't just something you drank. It evolved into this whole sophisticated art form, really a way of life. And during this era, there was this massive shift in thinking. Society basically went from a mindset of, let's just survive and fight nature, to, hey, let's actually appreciate it. And this new sense of harmony with the natural world, it influenced everything, especially the arts. Yeah, tea culture became a really serious business. People would hold these super elaborate gatherings and even competitions. They judged the skill of the tea masters based on the quality and the persistence, how long it would last, of the fine, white foam they could whip from powdered tea. And this is where our bowl becomes the star of the show. So why this bowl? Simple. Its deep, dark black glaze created this incredible visual contrast with the snowy white foam of the tea. It was basically the perfect stage, designed to make the tea itself the main event, to make it look as beautiful as it possibly could. And you better believe this incredible effect wasn't lost on the great writers of the day. The famous poet Su Dongpo, for example, wrote about just being mesmerized by the rabbit hair patterns he saw in his cup. So you see, these bowls weren't just for drinking tea. They were actual objects of poetic inspiration.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, how in the world were these incredible cosmic-looking patterns created? Well, it turns out this is where art meets a beautiful and totally unpredictable kind of science. So you see these patterns with cool names like rabbit hair, oil spot, or partridge feather. Here's the crazy part. They weren't painted on by an artist. Nope, they just emerged organically during the firing process, born from the intense heat of the kiln. It was like a collaboration between the potter and the fire itself.
So the secret was this unique recipe of local conditions. First, you start with clay from Fujian province that's naturally packed with iron. Then, you combine that with a really simple ash-based glaze. Now, when you fire this in a massive dragon kiln at temperatures over 1300 degrees Celsius, well, something magical happens. The iron in both the clay and the glaze supersaturates, and then as it cools, it precipitates out, forming these absolutely marvelous crystalline patterns.
And that right there is the core appeal. Because the whole process was so dependent on the whims of the fire, it means that no two Jian bowls could ever be exactly alike. Think about that. Each one is a completely unique, one-of-a-kind record of its own fiery birth.
So, with a status like that, you'd think this craft would have just continued forever, right? But what actually happened to Zhan after the Song dynasty, well, it's a story of being lost and then, centuries later, found again. So what happened? Well, after its peak in the Song dynasty, tea culture itself started to change. The whole practice of whipping powdered tea fell out of fashion, and when that went, so did the demand for these bowls. And then, the secrets of how to make them were just lost for over 600 years. It wasn't until 1935 that an American scholar, James Marshall Plummer, started poking around the old abandoned kiln sites, and that sparked some new interest. And finally, by the 1970s, Chinese artisans had cracked the code and managed to revive this incredible lost art. But the legacy of those original bowls, man, it had already spread far and wide. Japanese monks who were studying in China brought them home, and they were so revered there that they basically became foundational to the Japanese tea ceremony. And get this for prestige. Of the 8 ancient Chinese ceramics that Japan has designated as national treasures, a full half of them, 4, are original Song Dynasty Jian bowls. That's how important they are.
And this spot right here was the epicenter of it all. From the kilns in Fujian province, these bowls didn't just travel with monks. Oh no, they became key luxury goods. They were exported in huge numbers from the ports in the region, traveling all along the famous maritime Silk Road and carrying their unique beauty all across the world. So when you think about it, from an emperor's favorite teacup to a completely lost craft and now to a priceless museum artifact and a revived art form, the story of Jian is just this powerful reminder of how art, science, and culture can all come together in one single beautiful object.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In a world that's so often striving for digital perfection and mass-produced everything, what can we learn from an art form that doesn't just accept, but actually celebrates the unique, the unpredictable, and even the beautiful flaws created by the chaos of the fire?